The first thing I noticed was that Lily had stopped singing. That might sound small, but anyone who knew my daughter would have understood why it scared me. Lily Whitmore was 6 years old and almost never quiet. She sang while brushing her teeth, made up stories while eating breakfast, and asked questions from the moment she opened her eyes until the second she fell asleep. That Tuesday morning, she sat in the backseat of my car with her favorite stuffed rabbit in her arms, staring out the window. "Mommy," she said. I looked at her through the rearview mirror. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" She placed her tiny hand over her chest. "Why does my heart feel like it's running fast?" For a second, I felt something cold move through me, but I did what I always did. I convinced myself everything was fine. "Maybe you're just tired," I said gently. "We'll get you checked out, okay?" I didn't know that those words would become the beginning of the hardest 2 days of my life. By that afternoon, Ethan and I were sitting in a children's hospital room in Columbus, Ohio, listening to a doctor explain that our daughter had a serious heart condition. The doctor spoke calmly, the way doctors do when they are trying not to frighten you. "Lily needs surgery," he said. "The sooner the better." I held onto Ethan's hand. "How soon?" I asked. The doctor looked at the papers and within 48 hours. 48 hours. Those 2 words followed me everywhere. They followed me when I called the insurance company and waited on hold, listening to the same music repeat over and over. They followed me when Ethan and I opened every account we had, checking savings, credit cards, anything that could. They followed me when I looked at my small baking business and wondered how I was supposed to keep everything. Sweet Willow Bakery had taken me years to. It was never a huge company. It was just me, my kitchen, my customers, and the little reputation I had created, one cake at a. It paid our. It helped support, but it wasn't enough to suddenly cover a crisis like. That was when I thought about my parents. Diane Caldwell had always been difficult. She had opinions about everything. My career, my marriage, the way I raised. But deep down, I still believed if I truly knew her. Because parents were supposed to be there when their child had nowhere else. I called her the morning. She answered. "Rachel, honey, I was actually going to call you," she said. "The wedding arrangements have been so full. You wouldn't believe how many problems." I closed. My younger brother Jason's wedding had been the biggest event in my parents' lives for months. Every conversation somehow returned to the venue. The flowers, the expenses. "Mom," I said quietly, "I need to talk to you." Her voice changed. I explained everything, the diagnosis, the surgery. When I finished, there was. "Rachel, your father and I have already spent so much money on." I looked at the hospital bed where. "Mom, I'm not asking you to pay for a party. I'm asking you to help save." "Don't." "Like what?" "My hand." "Then show." "We have responsibility." Floor. I couldn't believe hearing. "My daughter needs surgery. And your Rachel, this wedding once." I felt something break. "This." I didn't answer. Minutes later. "We need to think about what's one." That weighed with me. Somehow. Everyone did. After I hung up, Ethan found me sitting alone in the hallway. "She said no?" he asked. I nodded. "Say anything." He me. That hurt almost more than it would have. Because there was nothing. That evening, my father. I thought maybe. My dad was the kind of person. Broken doors, old cars, anything to be repaired. I thought makes this. But after Lee said, "Your mother and I about it, and worse." That was the moment I understood. I had spent years hoping my was me. The moment came. They had already else. Later that night, Lily woke up from my hand. "I'm here. Am I going to be okay?" I looked at my little girl and every fear inside for a moment. "Yes," I whispered. After she fell asleep, Ethan and I saw hospital lights, trying more option. My phone vibrated, no number. Just ignored it. But something in the message. It said, "I heard about Lily, let me help." Stared at the screen. I had no idea who sent it, and I had no idea that this one message would change the future family. I stared at the message on my phone for almost a full minute. "I heard about Lily, please, let me help." No name, no explanation, just those words. My first reaction was suspicion, not hope, suspicion. Because when your life falls apart, you start questioning everything. You wonder why someone would suddenly appear when the people closest to you have already walked away. I looked at Ethan. Someone texted me. He leaned closer. Who? I don't know. I showed him the screen. He read it twice. Do you recognize the number? I shook my head. No. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan said quietly, maybe answer. I hesitated. My entire life I had been taught to be careful. Don't owe people anything. Don't show weakness. Don't ask for too much. But my daughter was lying in a hospital bed. This was not the time to protect my pride. I typed back. Who is this? The reply came less than a minute later. It's Marianne Foster. I'm one of your bakery customers. I remembered the name. Marianne had ordered a birthday cake from me 2 years early. She was in her early 60s, always wore simple clothes, and always left kind reviews after every order. But she was still just a customer, not family, not someone I could ask for a life-changing favor. I wrote, Marianne, thank you for reaching, but we're trying to figure things out. Her answer came quick. Rachel, I know what that sentence means. It means you're trying to be strong because you don't want to admit you need help. I looked at the words bothered me because they were true. The next morning, Marianne came to the hospital. She walked into the waiting area carrying a small paper bag from a coffee shop. Hi, Rachel. I stood. Marianne, you didn't have to. She gave me a small That answer surprised. Most people would say, of course I have. But Marianne, she simply understood that she was choosing to be. She sat beside. How was scared? Then I corrected my. She's actually being. I'm the one who's. Marianne looked toward the hospital. You know something? Brave people are usually the ones who admit they're scared. I looked down. I don't even know why you're helping me. She was quiet for a moment, then said, because years ago someone helped me when I had. I waited for her to win, but didn't. Instead, she reached into her purse and placed an envelope on. My heart. What is that? Help. I pushed it back. No. Marianne, I can't. She didn't land. I don't know. She looked at me. You've made my family birthday cakes for 3 years. You remembered my granddaughter's favorite color. You stayed late once because I forgot to pick up my order before. I opened mouth, but nothing. You think being family is only about sharing a last name. Sometimes it's about who notices when giggling. Tears filled my eyes. I hated that I was crying in front of someone who was almost a stranger. I hated that a stranger had shown me more compassion in one day than my parents had shown weeks. But anything. I hated that part of me was still waiting for my call. Even after. I still say, Rachel, I changed my mind. Afternoon. My phone rang. I saw their name. For a second, my heart jumped. I answered immediately. Mom? There was a pause. Then she said, Rachel, I heard and helped you. Sat up. Oh, that. You mentioned it. Walked away. Of course. News traveled quick. Family. Oh. So I hope you understand this doesn't. Eyes. I knew this conversation was not going where. Mom, Lily is having surgery. Not because tension. Then what did you mean? She sighed. You always make everything about being chosen. Words hurt because they were aimed directly at the demon I had. Maybe. She didn't even realize it. Maybe that was the worst part. Because I've spent my whole life feeling like I wasn't, I said. The silence afterward felt heavier than lead. Then my mother changed the subject. Jason's wedding is this weekend. Still come? Almost laughed. Hospital room. At my daughter. At the machine's beat. Mom, my daughter heart surgery. I know. And you're asking if I can attend a wedding? Family matters. I looked around the hallway. At the nurses. At the families sitting beside sick children. At Ethan sleeping in a chair used to leave. Alone. Quietly. Yeah, does. The call. For the time in my life. Apologize. That night, surgery was scheduled. The doctors did everything carefully. There were risks. There were possibilities. Guarantees. Ethan, we listened. When the doctor left, we sat in silence. Then at us and smiled. Yeah? When I can we have pancakes? Through my tears. Yes. Chocolate chips? Extra chocolate. Good. The next morning, as the nurse prepared Lily for surgery, Marianne arrived again. This time, she wasn't carrying coffee. She was carrying something else. A folder. She handed it to me. What's this? Something you need to see. Lily comes out of surgery. Frowned. What is it? Marianne looked at operating room doors. It's about your bakery. I stared at her. She nodded. And for the first time since Lily got sick, I felt something I hadn't felt in Days, not relief, not happiness. Something. Smaller, something forgot. Hope. But I didn't know that saving Lily was only the beginning, because the crisis that brought my family apart was about to reveal secrets that had been hidden for years. The operating room doors closed behind Lily, and for the first time in 2 days, there was nothing I could do. That was the part nobody prepares you for. As a mother, you spend years believing your job is to protect your child. You check their temperature in the middle of the night. You hold their hand when they fall. You memorize every little expression on their face. But there comes a moment when love is not enough. A moment when you have to hand your child to someone else and hope they know how to save her. Sat in the hospital waiting room beside Ethan, staring at the clock on the wall. The second hand moved slowly, too slowly. Across from us, another family sat together. A father was holding a sleeping toddler. A grandmother was passing around snacks. Everyone looked exhausted. But they were together. I looked away. Not because I was jealous, because I was. And admitting that made me feel worse. I had always believed my family would be the people sitting beside me during moments like this. My parents should have been there. My brother should have been there. The only person who came was someone who used to buy birthday cakes from my kitchen. Marianne sat across from me quietly. She didn't try to fill the silence. That was the thing. I noticed her. Most people were uncomfortable with it. They rushed to sing. They tried to make you feel better because they couldn't handle seeing Marianne. She simply. After almost 3 hours, the surgeon finally walked toward us. Ethan immediately stood. How is she? The doctor smiled. The surgery. I covered. The breath I had been holding for hours finally. Can you see her? Soon, she'll still be. I closed my eyes. The doctor nodded and Ethan pulled me into his arms. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to cry. Not the quiet tears. I had not the kind where I wiped my face quickly. So notice. I cried because my daughter was still here. Because I had almost lost her. Because I was exhausted from pretending I prayed. When we finally saw Lily, she looked so small in that bed. There were wires attached to her, machine beside her, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked. But she opened her eyes. Mommy, I immediately grabbed her hand. I'm here, baby. Around. Did they fix my heart? I smiled. Yes, for a second. Can I have pancakes now? I laughed. Even laughed. The nurse smiled from the corner. She must be feeling better if she's already negotiated. Even everything. 2 days later, when stable, I finally opened the folder Marianne had given me in documents. At first, I didn't understand looking at the numbers, bakery, sales reports, customer growth, expenses, marks. I began. What is this? She sat across from me at the hospital cafeteria table. I used to own a restaurant. I blinked. You never told that? You never asked. Smiled slightly. That sounded exactly like something you would say, she continued. For 25 years, I ran a small family restaurant. It wasn't famous. It wasn't fancy. But people came and trusted us. I looked at the papers. And I know what happens to small businesses when the owner is trying to survive. I swallowed. I'm not sure I can go open. Forward. Why? Changed. No, she shook her head. Everything changed around you. That doesn't mean you're here. Her words stayed with me, because disappearing was something I was good at. I had done my whole life. I had made myself smaller when my mother criticized choices. I had stayed quiet when my brother needed more attention. I had accepted being called independent, because sometimes it was easier than felt forgotten. Marianne, Rachel, can I tell you? Okay. When my husband died and told me I was strong, I listened. It's a compliment. But sometimes people call you strong because they've decided you don't need help. I looked down. That sentence felt like someone opened a door beside me, because exactly what had happened. Parents had spent years telling me how capable I was, how resourceful I was, how proud they were that I could handle. That maybe somewhere along the way, that I was still their daughter. That night, when I returned to Lily's room, Ethan looking at his phone. What's wrong? I asked. He hesitated. It's your brother. My stomach tightened. What did Jason say? Ethan turned the phone toward me. It was a message from Jason. Mom told me what happened. I'm glad Lily is okay. I wish things had been different. I stared at the wall. I waited for anger, but I felt surprised me. Sadness. Because Jason sounded almost like what had happened. Like he was a storm from inside a house. Never realizing standing outside in the rain, I typed a response, then delete, typed again, did again. Finally, I put the phone down, not needed an immediate answer. The next morning, Lily was sitting up and eating applesauce when I almost ignored it. Almost, but some part of me, I answered. Rachel, my mother said. Her voice sounded softer than before. She's recovered. That a pause. Then, someone was able to help you. I looked at Marianne sitting by the winning bakery work. Yeah, someone was, my mother hesitated. I hope you don't think badly of us. I looked at my daughter. Then, I looked at a woman who had known family. Didn't. I don't know what I think yet. That was the first honest answer on her in years, and for once, I didn't feel guilty saying it. After he hung up, he reached for my hand. Me? Yeah? I smiled. A little. She thought about that. Squeezed my fingers. You hug me. I laughed softly. I do. She. Hug yourself. I smiled because only a 6-year-old could say something ill important. I looked out the hospital window. For the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe losing the family I thought I had was the beginning who would truly stay. But I did that the hardest part was still ahead, because when we returned home, I would discover that saving my life had created a new problem, one life I had spent years building. When we finally brought Lily home, I expected everything to feel normal again. I was wrong. The house looked exactly the same. The same family photos hung on the walls. The same blanket was folded on the couch. Lily's coloring books were still scattered across the coffee table. But something had changed. I had changed. Before the surgery, I believed my biggest problem was finding a way to save my daughter. After the surgery, I realized I was also trying to understand how the people I trusted most could watch me struggle and decide not to help. The hardest part was that my parents had not disappeared. If they had, maybe it would have been easier. They still sent messages. They still asked how Lily was doing. They still said things like, "We love you." But every message felt incomplete, like someone offering a bandage after causing the wound. 2 weeks after Lily came home, my mother called again. This time, she sounded different. Rachel, I think we need to talk. I stood in my kitchen, washing dishes while Lily watched cartoons in the living room. About what? About everything. I dried my hands. Okay. There was a pause. Then she said, "Your father and I feel like you've been angry with us." I almost laughed. Not because it was fun, because I couldn't believe that was the thing she noticed. Mom, my daughter needed emergency heart surgery. I know. And when I asked for help, you chose something else. Her voice became defensive. That's not fair. I stopped. Not fair. Yes, you make it sound like we didn't care about Liz. Then explain it to me. She was quiet. Finally, she said, "Your brother needed us too." I leaned against the couch. Jason needed money for flowers and decorations. Rachel, you don't understand everything that was involved. I said softly. I don't, and that was the truth. I understand. I didn't understand how a wedding budget could become more important than a child's heartbeat. I didn't understand how my parents could convince themselves they had made the right. But then my mother said something I never expected. You always had this way of making us feel like we failed you. I froze. What? You were always independent. Always doing your own thing. You built your business. You had your own family. We thought you... I stared out the window. The words should have made... Instead, they made me tired, because maybe that was this part. Maybe my parents truly believed this, and maybe they had spent years telling themselves the same. Rachel is strong. Rachel doesn't need us. Rachel will be fine. And somewhere along the way, they forgot that strong people still need someone. My mother needed you. After a long silence, I said, "I'm sorry." That sentence hurt more than it did, because it wasn't. It was a way of saying my pain belonged. I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then I noticed something. The envelope Marianne gave me there. Again. Inside were notes bakery. She had written suggestions about expanding my business, improving my website, and creating online orders. At first, I thought she was just helping financially. It wasn't. She was helping me a future I had. The problem was, my reality waited. Medical diving. The first envelope from the hospital drop. Other came. Other. With insurance, the numbers were higher than I expected. I sat at my desk that night looking at everything, the bills, the business expenses, the mortgage payment, the grocery budget, every number felt like another weight pressing down. Ethan came into the room and placed a cup of tea beside me. "You've been staring at those papers for an hour. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to do this." He pulled up a chair. "We'll figure it out." I looked at him. "Always say that." "Because we always do," smiled a little. That was Ethan. He never promised things would be easy. He just promised he didn't leave. That difference I realized. A few days later, I received a message from Jason. I almost ignored it, but I opened it. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen. Part of it wanted to say no. Another part of it answers. We met at a small coffee shop apartment. Jason looked tired, not the way someone looks after a party, the way someone looks after realizing something they didn't want to. "Admit Rachel," he said. I sat down. "Jason." He looked at his coffee. I didn't know how serious it was. I waited. Mom told me Lily was sick, but I didn't understand. I felt my jaw tighten. "Didn't ask." "No, you didn't call." "I know. Knew there was a..." He looked away. "I thought Mom, Dad were handling it." That sentence stayed between us because that was the problem. Everyone thought someone else was handling it. Everyone assumed I would survive. Everyone believed I was strong enough to carry the weight alone. Jason rubbed his hands together. I believed him. That surprised me, because anger had been easier. Anger was simple, but seeing regret on his face, everything more complicated. "I'm not angry you had a wedding," I said. He looked up. "I'm angry because nobody stopped to think about what was happening to Lily," said slowly. "I should have?" Yes, he didn't argue. That was the first time in weeks someone in my family admitted they were, but it didn't fix everything. Because apologies were easy, change was hard. When I got home that evening, I found a letter in my mail return address, no name. Inside was a copy of an old document. I read it once, then, again, my hands started shaking. It was connected to my bakery. And it was something my father had done months earlier, thing nobody had told me about. Something story I thought I knew. I looked at the document again, because suddenly, parents had only chosen my brother. I wasn't sure if that was the whole truth. For the first time since Lily's diagnosis, I realized there were pieces of my family's story that I had never been allowed to see. I read the document 3 times before I could understand what I was looking at. It was a business loan agreement, but not just any loan agreement. My father's name was on it. I sat at the kitchen table, the same place where I had spent countless nights decorating cookies, answering customer emails, and planning orders. Now I was sitting there holding a piece of paper that made me question everything I thought I knew. My father had helped my bakery. 6 months earlier, when I was struggling to upgrade my equipment, he had quietly contacted a local lender and used his own savings as a guarantee for a small business loan. Ethan didn't know, nobody told me. I immediately called him. He answered after a few rings. "Rachel? Dad, I found something." There was a pause. "What did you find?" I looked at the document in front of me. The loan agreement. Silence. Then I heard him breathe out. "Your mother told me not to mention it." My stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because she thought you would feel like you owed us." I stood up from the chair. "So you helped me?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell me?" My father was quiet, because he didn't have an answer. Finally, he said, "I should have." I walked to the window. For weeks, I had carried one painful belief, that my parents had never chosen, but now I was facing something more complicated. They had helped me, and they had still failed. Both things could be true. "Dad," I said softly, "I appreciate what you do. I know you're hurt." Another pause. "But I need you to understand something. Money was never the only thing I knew." His voice became quiet. "What do you mean?" "I needed you to show up." The line stayed silent. I needed my parents sitting beside me in that hospital. I needed someone to tell me they were scared too. I needed someone to say, "We'll figure that." My father. "I thought you had..." I closed my eyes. There it was. The same idea everyone had about me. She's okay. She has someone else. She can handle it. I did have Ethan said, but I still needed Dad. After I sat there for a long. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I also wasn't ready to. That anger had protected. Understanding made me vulnerable. The next morning, I met Marianne at a small coffee shop near my tree. She looked at me the moment how'd you know? She smiled slightly, because people usually look the same when they discover a truth they weren't down. My father helped my business. That sounds like a good thing, but I looked out but it doesn't erase what happened. Marianne nodded. No, it doesn't. That was another thing I appreciated about her. She Never tried to make my things smaller. Never said, tried. She never rushed me to forgiveness. Instead, she helped me focus on Sweet Willow Baking. Between hospital stress and orders, I had lost several rare customers and blame them. People needed ability, and for weeks, I had barely been able. Marianne, you need to stop treating your business like something you're. I loosed. What should I treat it like? Senior building. She showed me her idea. Lintan. Ordering seasonal dessert boxes local. Partnerships. A small weekend market booth. Magical. Nothing unrealistic, just steps. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was looking forward and backward. My phone rang. It was the hospital. Thank. After the call ended, and Marianne asked, well, the medical bills are, we expected. She reached across the table. I'm okay. She gave me a look. That look reminded me of something. I had spent years saying those, I'm okay. Even when I was exhausted, even when I needed someone. Know how to do this, I admitted, and nodded. That might be the first on. Quietly. Strange. Laughing. I had almost. Next few weeks, I worked than I ever had. Not because I wanted to prove something to my parents. Not because I wanted them to regret choosing Jason. Worked because stronger. Because Ethan believed in me, because Marianne reminded me that my life is still mine. But just when things started improving, a nudge appeared on my phone. It was from my mother. Rachel, we need to talk about what happened before the wedding. I stared at the screen. I had spent weeks trying to my family. Now, it seemed they were ready to their side, but I had no idea of hearing this closer together, or break whatever was left between us. I almost didn't answer my mother's message. For several minutes, I just stared at the screen. Rachel, we need to talk about what happened before the wedding. Those words sounded simple, almost harmless, but I had learned something over the past few weeks. Simple words could carry years of pain. Ethan noticed me sitting quietly on the couch. Your mom? I nodded. What does she want? I looked at the message again. I don't know. He sat beside me. You don't have to answer right away. That was one of the reasons I loved Ethan. He never pushed me toward forgiveness. He never pushed me toward anger either. He just reminded me that I had a choice. Something I hadn't felt I had in a long time. The next day, I agreed to meet my parents. Not at their house, not at mine. Somewhere neutral. A small diner near the highway where nobody could easily walk away from the conversation. When I arrived, my parents were already sitting at a booth. My mother looked older than I remembered. My father looked tired. For a second, I almost felt sorry for them. Then I remembered Lily lying in that hospital. I sat down. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, my mother said, Rachel, we know we hurt you. She looked down. We made a mistake. Those words should have made me feel better. They didn't. Because a mistake was something you made by accident. A mistake was forgetting an appointment. A mistake was buying the wrong gift. You didn't accidentally make your daughter feel alone while her child was fighting for her life. It happened. My father looked at mother. Your brother was... Yes. With what? My mother. Pressure. Wedding. Future. Jason was stressed. I almost... My daughter needed emergency. No. And you were worried about Jason being stressed? Nobody answered. That silence told me everything. Years. Jason had been the child everyone protected, the one everyone worried about, the one everyone made excuses for, and I had become the child everyone trusted. Father rubbed there. We thought you had more support. I looked at him. Who? Sir. Who did you think was going to help me? He looked away. That hurt. Because even now, he couldn't say it. They had assumed someone would save me. Someone else would wait. Someone else would stand where they should have stood. My mother reached for my hand. In a way, movement was small. Noticed. Need you to understand something, I said. Hate you. My mother's eye tears. Tired. Tired of what? She asked. Tired of proving I'm worth showing up for. The diner suddenly felt very quiet. The waitress passed by our table. A coffee cup touched the table. Us. Sat in the background. Life continued around us while my family sat in the middle of something that had been broken for years. My mother wiped her eyes. You. I believe you. She looked surprised. Yes. Took a breath. But loving someone, knowing how to love them, things. After the meeting, I acted to feel relief. I didn't. I felt empty, because sometimes the truth repair the damage. Sometimes it only... When I got home, I had a problem waiting. My bakery's big client had canceled. The message was too polite. Due to circumstances, we've decided other direction. Read it twice. Then I looked at the calendar. 3 large orders had appeared in 1 month. The hospital, the mist, the stress, everything was catching up. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor surrounded by baking supplies. I had built Sweet Willow Bakery from nothing. Every customer, every review, every late, all of it. And watching it slip away, found me there. Asked if I was okay. He knew better. Instead, he sat beside me. I'm scared. He looked at me. About money? I shook my head. About losing everything. He nodded. I looked at him. You do? Yes. That surprised me. Why didn't you say anything? He smiled sadly. Because you weren't ready to hear. I looked down. That hurt because it was true. I had been so focused on everyone who failed me that I hadn't noticed the people quietly standing beside me. The next morning, I called Marianne. I think I need help. There was a pause. Good. I laughed softly. Good? Yes. Because asking for help means you finally understand everything alone. Over the next few days, we worked together. Not to create a miracle, to suddenly make everything perfect, just small steps. New menu ideas, better shows, community events, local partners. Slowly, feeling like myself again. Then one Friday evening, while I was closing the bakery, Jason walked in. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked exhausted. I crossed my arms. About. He looked around, then back at me. About Mom. I waited. They never told you everything. My expression changed. Then took a deep breath. Something about the wedding money started beating faster. He looked uncomfortable. Changed everything. The money wasn't just from their savings. I stared at him. Then where did Jason look down? The thing that belonged to you went completely silent. And suddenly, I realized the story of betrayal was not finished. Not even close. I stood behind the counter of Sweet Willow Bakery, staring at Jason. For a few seconds, I couldn't process what he had said. They used something that belonged to you. The words felt heavier than they should have, because after everything that happened, I thought I had already discovered the worst. I thought the worst pain was knowing my parents chose my brother's wedding over my daughter's surgery. Thought the worst part was realizing I had spent years waiting for people who were never going to show up the way I needed them to. But now Jason was telling me there was another piece of the story. What are you talking about? I asked. Jason looked uncomfortable. The money for the wedding. I waited. They borrowed against the property. My stomach tightened. What property? He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me enough. My old bakery space? Jason looked down. Rachel. No. My voice came out sharper than I expected. Say it. He swallowed. Yeah. For a moment, all I could hear was the refrigerator humming behind the counter. The same refrigerator I had saved for years to buy. The same bakery I had built with my own hands. My parents used my property as collateral? Jason nodded. I didn't know the details until recently. I laughed once, not because anything was funny, because sometimes a person laughs when they don't know what else to do. They told me they supported my business. They did. I looked at him. How can you say that? Jason. Because Dad really did want to help. Then why would he risk it? Jason didn't answer, and that was because my father had, but he had also made a choice without telling me. Choice that affected my future. A choice that gave my parents control over something I had built. I felt betrayed all over again. Not the same way. Because this time, it wasn't about money. It was about, why are you telling me this now? Jason looked around. Because I finally realized, what? That everyone kept saying you. But nobody asked how much weight you. I didn't. Because I didn't know if I was angry at him or great. Once. Jason left 20. I stood alone. The place that had always been my safe place suddenly. At night. I sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with every document. The loan papers. The business. The proper information. Wasn't looking for a way to one. Wasn't trying to diss my family. Just needed to understand. Next morning, I called my father. He immediately. Rachel. Dad. I know property. Was silence. Then. Told you. Yes. Silence. Your mom. Of course, even now. The first concern was not what happened to me. It revealed it. Dad, why? We were trying Jason. I almost couldn't believe I was hearing. By risking my business? No, they saw it. The problem. I was in the kitchen. You keep the things for me. No, listen. My voice shook. I don't need perfect parents. I don't need you to fix everything. But I need you to respect me enough to tell me the truth. My father's quiet. Then he said something. Unexpected. You're right, I stopped. Didn't expect that. I should have told you. Yes, I was afraid you would say no. I frowned. Why? Because I see the risk. There silently. Because that was they knew. Responsible. They knew I would understand the consequences and they stopped me. We ended the call. I sat down. I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. Tired. That afternoon, Marianne came by the bakery. She immediately noticed something was wrong. What happened? I told her everything. She listened. Then she said, Rachel, going to do. I looked around. At the shelves, the ovens, the handwritten. It's from customers. I don't. She nodded. I smiled slightly. You always say that. Because uncertainty is honest. The display case. You have spent your whole life reacting to what other people decide. I looked at her. What do you mean? You decided you were strong. Your brother decided you would understand. One decided you would be okay. She looked back at me. When do you decide? That question stayed with me for years. I thought taking harder. Maybe it meant something else. Maybe one direction. Not because I was angry. Over the next month, I changed the way I ran Sweet Willow Bakery. I stopped taking every order just because I was afraid to disappoint people. I started creating products that represented my style. I partnered with a local coffee shop, joined weekend community markets. I shared my story only when I wanted to because I needed sympathy. This didn't explode overnight. No magical turnaround. Something important happened. People started noticing, not just my cakes. Me.1. Saturday morning, Lily sat at my bakery counting pictures while customers came in. Mommy, she said. Yeah? Yes? I laughed. No heart. She looked around. Us. People knew us. Not because we were perfect, we were still here. A few days later, I received an email from my mother. I almost didn't open it, but I did. There was no excuse, no explanation, just one sentence. I think I found what we lost. I stared at those words. Because of them. But another part of me knew understanding was only the beginning. The real question was whether they were willing to change, and I was about to find out because my mother had asked me not to defend herself. She had kept hidden for years. I almost canceled the meeting with my mother 3 times. The first time was the night she sent the message. I think I finally understand what we lost. The second time was the next morning when I imagined sitting across from her and hearing another explanation, and the third time was when I parked outside the small cafe where we agreed to meet and saw her sitting by the window. She looked nervous. That was something I had never seen before. Mother was always prepared. She had an answer for everything. She knew what to say, what to wear, how to present herself. But that day, she looked like someone who didn't know how to fix what she had broken. I walked inside. She stood up. Rachel. I nodded. Mom. We sat down. For several seconds, neither of us touched the coffee in front of us. Finally, she said, I know you probably don't believe me, but I have been thinking about everything. I looked at her. I believe you've been thinking. She looked down. But thinking is not the same as understanding. He nodded slowly. I deserve that. That surprised me because my mother rarely admitted. She took a... There is something you don't know about our... When you were young, your father lost his business. I know he struggled. You know... She wrapped both hands around her coffee. Your father's company nearly collapsed. We almost lost our... I listened. Jason was only a few years old. You were... I remember. My mother looked at me. You remember being the responsible. The words hit me, because they were true. Had always been the responsible one. The child who understood. The child who didn't ask for much. The child who adapted. My mother. After everything happened, we became afraid. Afraid of what? Losing him. And then Jason started struggling. He needed help. He needed attention. He was always having problems. She sighed. And you... About me. You were doing well. I almost smiled. There it was. This Same sentence I had heard my entire life. You're doing well. You're fine. You're strong. Mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. We convinced ourselves that giving more attention to Jason was okay because you seemed okay. I looked away. That doesn't make it okay. I know. Do you? He nodded. I do now. The now mattered. Because it meant for table. My whole life, I was punished because I handled things. No. Yes. Voice was calm. Almost too calm. You didn't see my strength as support. You saw it as permission me alone. My eyes. Sorry. This time sounded different. Not perfect. Not enough. But different. The problem was that being sorry didn't arise before. That conversation. I expected to feel bad. Instead, I felt placated. Because I wasn't only grieving parents did. I was grieving the parents I had spent years. When I got home, sitting on the porch. You okay? I think so. I smiled slightly. That you're not. Learning. Looked at me. Learning what? That I can love people and me. Nodded. That's probably one of. A week later, I came to the bakery. This time, didn't look uncomfortable, determined. Apology. I was packing. For what? For years. I expect that answer. He continued. Lucky. I frowned. Lucky? Yeah, he laughed sadly. You had your own business. You had Ethan. You always seemed what you were doing. I looked at and that meant you didn't. Anyway, I shook my head. Everyone thought that. I know. He looked. The bakery. To tell you something. I waited. The wedding almost didn't happen. Surprised. What? Everything happened with Lily. Enjoy it. He looked down. I had everything I wanted. But I knew my sister was sitting in a hospital, worried about her daughter would survive. I didn't say. And I should have called. Yes. Yes. I should have asked. Yes. He nodded. I know. That honesty mattered. Not because it fixed everything, because it was the first step. Months. Sweet Willow. Bakery continued growing slowly, not dramatically, not like some overnight success, just steady, real the way it usually changes. Lily got stronger, returned to school. She started drawing again. Vegetables. She still asked impossible questions. Little girl. Afternoon, while closing the bake, I received a letter. It was from my father. Inside was a simple note. I spent years thinking protecting people meant making for them. I was wrong. Sentenced several times. I folded the letter, carefully, because forgiveness was not a door you opened once. It was a road. Some days you walked forward, days you stopped, but you chose direction. My mother called. She asked if she could. I almost said no. The old immediately said yes, as I wanted my family back. I had become. Why? I asked. Silence. Then she answered. Daughter again. I looked at Lilor drawing beside me. Everything we had lost, we had gained. Yes, but we need boundaries. Then she said, I understand. After we hung up, I looked around my home. Same walls, the same furniture, the same, but everything felt different. Because I finally understood something. Family was not proven by who shared your blood, was proven by who your world was falling apart. And I thought the hardest part of the story was over. I was wrong, because the choices, my family made consequences, and soon, everyone would have to face them. The first time my parents came to my house after everything happened, I almost didn't recognize the feeling. Inside me, it wasn't anger, it wasn't forgiveness either. It was something in between, a quiet acceptance, that things would never go back to the way they were, and maybe they weren't supposed to. My mother arrived, with a small bag of groceries. That was very Diane Caldwell. She never came empty-handed, even when she didn't know how to say the right words. She always believed she could fix things by doing something practical. I brought some things Lily likes, she said. Looked inside the bag. Her favorite crackers, her favorite juice, a small package of chocolate chip cookies. For a second, I saw the grandmother Lily had always wanted. Not the woman who failed, not the woman who made a terrible choice. Just my mother, and that was the hardest part. People are rarely only one thing. My mother could hurt me deep, and she could still love my daughter. Both things could exist at the same time. Thank you. I wasn't sure if you would let me. I wasn't sure either. That honesty surprised both of us, but it was the first time we were speaking without pretending. Lily ran into Grandma. My mother immediately. The kind of smile I remembered from when I was. She knelt down carefully and hugged for it. Because I didn't want my daughter to inherit. I wanted her to have a relationship with her grandmother if it was safe. But I wanted it to happen to me. Not with me silently accepting everything just to keep. Later, after Lily went to bed, my mother and I sat at the kitchen. The same table where I had cried over medical. The same table where I had wondered if my family was gone. Forever. She looked around. Your bakery has changed. I smiled. It's. You look too. I didn't answer. Because she meant I was not the same person who had called her help. That woman was me. But she was no longer. My mother folded her hands. I want to do something, okay? Do you think we can ever be a family again? The question was simple. The answer wasn't. I think we can be something. She looked at me. But we can't pretend nothing happened. I know, I love you. Mom, she looked surprised. But I also need to protect myself. She nodded slowly. I understand. And that was the first time I believed she actually did, not completely, not perfectly, enough. A few weeks later, another family function happened. This time, us were there. Me, Ethan, parents, and uncomfortable. Finally, Jason spoke. I an apology. Looked at him. Jason, shook his head. At me. I spent years accepting help without him from. Quiet. I thought, because you were older, more. Because you had your life together, needed less. He swallowed. It wasn't fair. Father nodded. I did you both. I looked at him. Both? He sighed. Yes, because you protected Jason too much. He nodded. You're right. That was something I never did to him. Here, my father is wrong. The old me held on to that moment like proof that I finally mattered. He simply accepted it. Because my value had stopped depending on whether recognized it. That was the freedom I had never understood before. A month later, Sweet Willow received an invitation. Not from a customer, local community center. They wanted me to provide desserts for a charity event. When I read the email, quietly for a moment, 2 years earlier, I had started my bakery because of creating things. Then life happened. The hospital, the bills, the pain. Along the way, I almost why I started that night. Lily helped me decorate sample cookies for the event. She carefully put all sugar heart top. Mommy? Yes? I looked at her. What makes you ask? Smile more now. I stopped. Because children notice things adults ignore. I smiled. Yeah. The event was a morning. Families walked through the community center. Children ran between tables. Talked, laughed, shared stories. Standing there behind my bakery table, I realized something. The people who saved me were not the people I expected. Marianne there. Ethan was there. Lily was there. Even my parents came. Not to take credit, not to explain, just to support. After the event, stood beside me. You built something beautiful. Looked at the sign hanging above my table. Thank you. She hesitated. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I nodded. Me too. She looked confused. What do you mean? I'm sorry I spent so many years for you to see my worth. Eyes filled with tears. Because we both understood what that meant. Had been asking the wrong person to believe in myself. That night, after everyone, I locked the bakery door. The sound echoed through the empty. Months ago, sound would have meant another problem. Thing I had to handle alone. Now it felt different. It sounded like a beginning. But as I walked toward my car, I saw an envelope tucked under the shield. No name, no return address. My first thought was fear, because I had learned expected message everything. Oh, inside was a document, and one sent by hand. Rachel, you deserve about what happened with the loan. I looked at the page. My heart sank, because after all the conversations, all the apologies and all the healing, there was still one unanswered question. Why had my father really made that decision? And the answer was about to change the way I saw my entire family forever. I held the document in my hands for several minutes before I opened it. Part of me wanted to put it away. I was tired of secrets. tired of discovering painful truths hidden inside my own family. For months, it felt like every time I thought I understood what happened, another piece of the story appeared. But I had learned something important. Avoiding the truth did not protect me. It only delayed the moment when I had to face it, so I opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of the original loan paperwork, and attached to it was a note from my father. Rachel, I know you have every reason to be angry with me. I made a decision that affected your life without asking you. That was wrong. But there is something I never told you. The loan was not originally for Jason's wedding. I read the sentence twice. Then I continued. When your bakery started growing, I saw how hard you were working. I knew you were afraid to expand because you didn't want to take a risk. I wanted to help you purchase better equipment and move into a bigger space. I stopped reading for a moment, because this was the part that hurt. Not because it was bad, because it was good, and good things were sometimes harder to understand than bad ones. My father had wanted to support me, but then Jason's wedding happened. The family pressure, the expectations, the idea that everything had to be perfect, and my father made another choice, a choice that changed the purpose of the loan, a choice he regretted. The final sentence said, I thought I was protecting everyone. Instead, I hurt the person who trusted me most. I folded the letter carefully. Then I sat down. For the first time, I saw the whole picture. My parents were not villains in my story. They were flawed people who made selfish decisions. They loved their children, but they had spent years loving us in different ways. They protected Jason because they were afraid he would fail. They trusted me because they believed I could survive anything. And they never realized that being the child who survives does not mean you don't need support. That evening, I called my father. He answered quietly. Rachel. Dad. I read the letter. A long pause. I'm sorry. I sat on the couch. I know. You don't have to forgive me. I know. I mean it. I know. My father became quiet. Then he asked, Are you still angry? I thought about that. A few months earlier, the answer would have been yes. But now, I'm not angry the way I was. What changed? I looked around my house, at Lily's drawings on the refrigerator, at the photos of our family, at the life I almost lost, but somehow rebuilt. I stopped needing you to admit I was worth choosing. My father didn't speak, and once I stopped needing that, I could finally see everything clearly. He took a shaky breath. I wish I had understood that sooner. So do I. That was the truth. Forgiveness did not mean pretending the past didn't happen. It meant accepting that the past could no longer control my future. A year later, Sweet Willow Bakery moved into a small storefront downtown. It wasn't huge. It wasn't some glamorous success story, but it was mine. The walls were painted warm white. The shelves were filled with dessert. A small table near the window held coloring supplies for children. That was Lily's idea. Every bakery needs a kid corner, she had said. She was 8 years old now. Her heart was strong. Her confidence was big, and she still asked for extra chocolate chips whenever she could. Some things never change. On opening day, I stood outside the bakery holding the key. The same kind of keys that had once represented fear. Fear of losing everything. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being alone. Now they represented something else. Choice. Inside the bakery, Ethan wrapped his arms around. You ready? I smiled. I think so. He looked around. You know what? When this all started, you thought your life was falling apart. I nodded. It felt like... And I looked through the window. Customers were walking. Marianne was helping Lily arrange cookies. My parents were sitting at a table together. Jason was carrying boxes from the storage. Not a perfect family. Not a repaired version of the past. Something more honest. Now I think everything was changed. Ethan smiled. That sounds like something Marianne would... I laughed. She probably would. That evening, after everyone left, I stood alone in the bakery. I turned off the lights one by one. The quiet sound of the door locking reminded me of the night I had closed my old bakery, feeling like I had lost everything. But this time I didn't feel alone, because I finally understood what family really meant. It wasn't about who shared your last name. It wasn't about who was supposed to show. It wasn't about pretending people never heard. Family was built through choice, through honor, through the people who stayed when staying was difficult. Years later, Lily asked me about that. She was old enough to understand that she had been sick. She was old enough to know that many people had been scared. Mom, she asked one evening, were you scared? I smiled. Yes. Really? Really. Then how did you keep... I looked at the daughter who changed my entire life. I learned that being strong doesn't mean you never need... She thought about it. Then she said, because now you let people... And she was... The biggest lesson I learned was not that my parents... It was that one painful moment does not have to define your entire... People can make mistakes. Families can trust, but in the middle of losing what you thought, you discover what you truly. A husband a daughter a friend who appeared when I needed someone, and a version of myself I had been searching for all. Not someone who was someone who knew, and that was the beginning of